Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the grey. Today's video, we're going to have a chat. The problem with the General's Handbook. And in this video, I want to talk about what I see as the weakest part of Age of Sigmar as a game to start with. And before we get into talking about this, I want to say, I think Age of Sigmar, at its core fundamentals, the two major parts of the game, out of the three, are fantastic. And even, you can go that 0.5 offshoot of 3, I think it was really good as well. And so those points I'm talking about, first of all, I think the core rule set for Age of Sigmar 3.0 is great. Now, this should be said, this does not include battle packs in what I'm talking about. So battle tactics, grand strategies, all that, I don't think they are part of what makes the game great. While they have their place in a tournament setting, I enjoy playing games without them just as much. And I don't think they are, a necessary part to make 3rd edition enjoyable. 3rd edition is enjoyable because of the way they've done a lot of rules cleanup. They've started using universal special rules like ward saves, and they need to continue doing that, I think, in the future. We definitely want to see, maybe a universal rule for bodyguard, universal rule for rerolls, and reroll hit rolls are one. Just give it a name so you can put that rule on a war scroll, and everyone knows what it means. There's a reason why hatred existed, or was reroll wound rolls back in the day for fantasy. But the other part is the battle tomes. I think, bar the initial launch battle tomes, which would have been made quite a bit ahead of the rest of the battle tomes, and launch battle tomes always suffer from the issue of they generally don't hold up in an edition quite well and need an update. I mean, you can look at 40k. These can be rectified really well because 40k Necrons were not doing great, but now Necrons are one of the best armies in Warhammer 40k, so really interesting. But the battle tomes, I think, for Age of Sigmar, Maggiekin onwards, I think is fantastic. I think Skaven is maybe a little lackluster in people didn't get the miniature release they wanted for Skaven, but I don't think the battle tome is bad at all. I think the way they updated Skaven was a great battle tome and stuff like that. And the third part, the part I don't think is great, is the General's Handbook. Now, that should be said that I thought an offshoot that was like Thondia. I thought Thondia, for being the narrative and open play supplement that used to be part of the General's Handbook, was fantastic. For me, someone who enjoys that style of gaming, and for a lot of people I know that enjoy that, I think Thondia was really great. It showed how to write a narrative book. It gave you 5 scenarios that were all intertwined. Really, really well done with Thondia. Last GHB wasn't too bad because it was pushing models we already were using as power pieces for our army in the monster meta. So that's the interesting thing about last one, where most people owned that big centerpiece model and you made that the focus of the games. Everyone owned, or most people own that big centerpiece for their army, Most Slaves to Darkness players will own an Archaon or a Bellicor. Most Stormcast players will at least own one of the big dragons. Or, one of the big power pieces, or like big characters, Stelsa Prime, Yndrasta. Most Sylvaneth players own a Lariel or a Durthu, etc., etc. And I think that GHB, and the idea that they've had with these GHBs now for the last couple, is, this sort of, we're going to make this about a particular type of unit. I think we got the best possible example of how that can work when you pick something that everyone is including. Now, the difference between that one and this GHB, there are a few key issues. And first of all, I want to talk about this that popped up. Now, this has apparently been proven completely false. This is not rumor or anything. Someone posted up something talking about new GHB rules, though. Apparently a new GHB would, and like I said, this has been pretty much completely proven false, but regardless, I think it's important to talk about this and why I don't like this and why I don't like the current GHB that much. Small hero focus. Heroes 9 wounds and under cannot be targeted by shooting unless they're the closest enemy unit. However, there'll be a battalion that allows battle line units to shoot enemy units even if they're not the closest. And the battle tactics will be themed around killing and doing things with these small heroes. And that sounds pretty much similar to what we have now, where it is battle line units of 4 wounds or less. And it's all this. So, straight away, that first example I try to say about Galate, battle line 4 wounds or less, they count as Galatian veterans. That's always, monsters are better in the game. battle line units with less than 4 wounds that are not mounted on anything are good in the game. Like, straight away, do you see that difference between the two things? Like, one of these is something everyone can associate with. Everyone knows what a monster is. We look at them and we go, that has a monster keyword. Galatian Veterans added another layer of knowing what something is, and the problem with Galatian Veterans is things aren't always Galatian Veterans. You have these things where, like, for example, Skaven. I can choose to have, say I've got 3 Plague Monk units in my Skaven army, but I've only got 1 Plague Priest. That means only one of those Plague Monk units would be a Galatian Veteran unit. And, you know, this goes the same for so many different armies on how you can build. And while, you know, at maybe a top-tier competitive level, that does make army list building really interesting. But it is a massive barrier of entry in that current GHB to have to understand this extra, rather complicated thing when you really get down to the nitty-gritty on it. Now, the second thing is not all armies have that. There are so many armies in the game that don't include that. Now, while I can't say that every army includes a monster, the vast majority did. And Age of Sigmar 3.0 already boosted characters, which were character monsters, which were generally what we were seeing. We weren't seeing generic monsters, we were seeing character monsters. So even armies like Nighthaunt that didn't have monsters to take advantage of the monster stuff, they had characters that could boost. But also, the monsters were I guess, negative because they did give away points. So while they scored points, they gave away. And they were much easier to sort of, you know, use on the table. I think it was just more simple how that worked. Now, we moved on to Galatian Veterans. And like I said, I think the big difference in this is monsters, they looked to have got that balance right between giving the points for monsters and what monsters could do. Monsters only affected battle tactics. That was it. Monsters got you extra points for doing battle tactics, and you got points for killing monsters. It was all scoring system. However, what they've done with Galatian Veterans, if they made Galatian Veterans count as these extra models and objectives, and that's fine. I think that is fine in itself. Being able to go in the, what is it called, Expert Conquerors Battalion and count as extra models. I think that in itself is fine, because that's sort of pushing, you know, objective play and points at the end of the day. That's doing the same thing. Maybe through a couple of loopholes, it is doing the same thing. Maybe you could have scored an extra point if a Galatian Veteran was on an objective. Is a quicker way to do it, but whatever. The difference is, though, that battalion, and I think this is where it goes down to being bad, is that they did this, and for some reason they've put in a battalion that makes those Galatian Veterans an utter liability. Not a, oh, you have to protect them. They are a liability. I've played enough games of 3.0 now at tournaments to see how badly Galatian Veterans do. And it, especially in more casual settings as well, when you're being told by the company that we're playing an infantry edition, yet the infantry gets smashed. If you've just painted up 180 zombies, you know, because you're going, it's an infantry edition, or I feel really bad for INF players is a perfect example. I have a few friends that picked up the Thrower army because it became good in the INF book. And then we got this, and all of a sudden those Thrower armies are terrible. Because they just get smashed by anyone that takes bounty hunters. And I think this was the big issue. In bounty hunters pushed it too far against the Galatian Veterans. And so we had that point where, like, bounty hunters is way too oppressive onto the thing. So we've got a couple of problems. First of all, it's a convoluted rule with Galatian Veterans in itself. It should have just been all infantry if you wanted to run it. Anything with 4 wounds or less, you know, or like all non-mounted models. That should have been the thing. Like, anything with 4 wounds or less is too complicated. It should have either been anything with 4 wounds or less, and that means cavalry as well. Anything with 4 wounds or less, or anything that's not mounted and not a hero. And so that's what it should have been. The second one is, they've not got that balance right between Galatian Veterans and Bounty Hunters. Bounty Hunters is just way too up on Galatian Veterans. Now, the other thing in this one is battle tactics. I think the battle tactics at the start, people were like, oh, maybe they're harder to complete. I don't think the current set of battle tactics are any harder to complete than any other set of battle tactics I've seen. The difference is they're about 3 sentences longer. That might be an exaggeration, but they are substantially longer, more wordy, more complicated to figure out, especially with, is that a Galatian veteran? Is this a Galatian veteran? How have you built your army? How does it do this? It's so much more complicated in the battle tactics phase because there is so many more loopholes and so many more hoops to jump through. I think that just makes it not a fun part of the game, and that may be why I've been turned off battle tactics, because I used to not mind them, but I think over the course of this GHB I've really come to not enjoy playing battle tactics. And I've actually just recorded up a couple of games playing the Contest of Generals battle pack, the core rulebook battle pack, and I enjoyed battle tactics so much more in that because they were simple and they were fun. They added to the game, they caused scoring points and all that, but they were simple. Now, the last thing I think to talk about with this current GHB is the battle plans. I think this is the worst set of battle plans we have ever had for Age of Sigmar, like by a long shot. There are so many bad scenarios in this. I look at 40k, and this is going to sound interesting because I know 40k is not in the best balance place, or maybe 40k is in a pretty good balance place, but not like comparative to Age of Sigmar. No. But 40k's missions, most of them are solid. I would say out of the 12 you get, or the 9 or whatever it is, I would say 80% of them are good for a tournament. And the other ones are quirky and fun. Where the Age of Sigmar ones, there's maybe 4, maybe 5 that are actually good. And there's not really any interesting ones. I look at Realmstone Cache, I get the idea of it, but it's not as fun as, say, chasing around Relocation Orb. It's not got that quirkiness to it, like Relocation Orb, where it bounces around. It's boring, because it is a smash in the center for 2 turns, where Relocation Orb jumped every turn. And, you know, there were those fun parts of Relocation Orb where it literally went around the map. I remember I played one game at CanCon, and the Relocation Orb literally bounced, and we spent the whole time just to put it back where we did. It was fantastic. You know, it was a waste of time, but it was fantastic. It made for a fun scenario. And I don't think there are any of those interesting scenarios or fun scenarios in the current battle pack. And I think there's a severe lack of actual ones able to be used in a tournament, which is what this should be. Fun scenarios should be in something like Thondia. That's where the fun and the sort of narrative-based scenarios should go. The General's Handbook is meant to be for match play. So the scenarios should be aimed at playing a match play game. They don't need quirky rules. They don't need, you know, all of these weird and different things about them. They just need to be good deployment maps, good objectives, and maybe something. But they don't always need to have a quirk. Like, they can just be 2 units line up. There are 4 objectives, but they're all sort of spaced weirdly on the map. Or, you know, deployment maps. You could have L sections. There's lots of different things you can do without having to add those weird rules to the game. And I think that's really the defining point. The first part, you know, Galatian veterans and bounty hunters is a big issue, as is the battle tactics. But I think the battle plans are the thing that really make this hard. So I think for me, the next General's Handbook is going to be incredibly important for the purposes of the game continuing to grow. Because I know a lot of people that have fallen off with this GHB. Not because they don't like Age of Sigmar. I know a lot of people that like Third but don't like this GHB. And so I hope the next GHB, I hope they've learnt from this one. My worry for the next GHB would be that it probably got printed when they weren't sure how the community reacted to this and how this really worked. So it'll be interesting to see. I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts though. What do you think of the current GHB? What do you think we need to change to make it better? Do you agree? Is this the worst GHB we've ever had? Maybe bar GHB 1, but even that was pretty cool. It had past glory rules for every army in it. But let us know what you think down in the comments below. Well, that's the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And also drop us a comment down below letting us know what you enjoyed about the video. If you'd like to go and chat more with me and other members of our community here at Cinderful Gaming, you can do so on our Discord server, which is linked down in the video's description. If you'd like to help support the channel more, you can do so either by Patreon or YouTube members, or going to our Teespring store, all of which are linked down in the video's description as well. As a special thank you to our patrons and YouTube members, we'd like to give you all a shout out. So, a special Patreon shout out to Christian Weir, Soren, Kenny Lyle, Aaron Shot First, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, The Rising Ape, Q Dynamic, Anthony B, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domir, Mark Harvey, James Cader, Derek Bloobs, Benjamin Suarez, and Red Martin. And as thank you to our YouTube members as well: Green Roots Gaming, Kenton Young, Ronya, Lock Lorick, The Johnny84, David Ellsworth, Wolfric Nick, Broken Chef, Ariana Edwards, Revenar, Pink, Nico Fire, Robin Mankiller, Monty's Tabletop Terrain, John Castle, and Davis Wire. Special thanks also to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork you see on the channel, like you can see pictured here on this slide. Thank you once again for watching, everyone. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the grey. Ciao for now.